Come and sit by my side and I'll tell you a story, a vision passed on by those now gone. A new forest was shaping from lands nobody wanted, and she'll take 100 years or more to grow tall. But the people needed a place to escape to, and the men needed jobs just to keep their families fed. So they dammed up the river and built a place to gather. They built a refuge everlasting. Pounds Hollow, the work of Roosevelt's men, an oasis among these destitute lands, a vision of a new Shawnee forest. Your legacy lives on today in your song. Generations have played in your river-fed waters, and the laughter of all of your children still heard. And now a winding path leads from lakeshore to shelter, and your permanence lies in your stone and your song. Pounds Hollow, the work of Roosevelt's men, an oasis among these destitute lands, a vision of a new Shawnee forest. Your legacy lives on today in your song.
Hello, welcome to Carbondale Unitarians Fellowship Spiritual Sustenance, our online alternative to Sunday services. I'm Joyce Shepard, and I'm a member involved in Pastoral Friends, Nominating Committee, and Choir, just to name a few things. And I'm your spiritual sustenance facilitator this morning. The Carbondale Unitarian Fellowship is a member congregation of the Unitarian Universalist Association, sharing the good news of Unitarian Universalism with folks throughout the river region. Our good news is a message of love, freedom, reason, and respect as the basis for religious community. We are a congregation of folks with open minds and hearts, those of all ages, all colors, all genders, all abilities, all kinds of wealth, all kinds of love. If you are a newcomer to our Spiritual Sustenance video service, I'd like to extend a special welcome to you. We're so glad you're here. Our monthly theme is nature. This morning, Reverend Bill Sasso will be speaking with us about the Vote Love campaign and how it can help us engage in a democratic process and social justice. Now let's get started by lighting our chalice, symbol of Unitarian Universalism. Our chalice lighting is A Lifelong Sharing by Mother Teresa. Love cannot remain by itself. It has no meaning. Love has to be put into action, and that action is service. Whatever form we are, able or disabled, rich or poor, it is not how much we do, but how much love we put in the doing. A lifelong sharing of love with others. I've lit the chalice, and now, with intention, I'm placing a pebble in the bowl. All are invited to place a glass pebble in your bowl at home to mark a sorrow, joy, or whatever you are feeling anytime in the service. Now, please join Robert Swinson in singing Spirit of Life. Words are on the screen.
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the strength of God. Oh, in the wind, rise in the sea, move in us, giving life with shape of justice. Words hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to
Since 2017, Susan Frederick Ray has been president of the Unitarian Universalist Association. Before that, she was a UU minister serving a church in Phoenix, Arizona, where she was very engaged in social justice ministry, especially around immigration justice. As president of the UUA, she's maintained that social justice focus in her ministry, so it's not a surprise to hear that in August 2017, only a few weeks after becoming president, she traveled with other faith leaders to Charlottesville, Virginia, to protest in opposition to the white supremacist rally scheduled to be held there. Speaking later about what she learned from her experience in Charlottesville, she said this: "Two things are absolutely clear to me right now. Number one, this is no time for a casual faith or a casual commitment to your values, your community, your congregation, your soul, or your faith. No time for a casual faith. And number two, this is no time to go it alone or to think that we are in this alone." Those insights and the fact that the 2020 national election was both critically important and coming up less than a year away, led to thinking about how to engage the national process of democracy with our UU values. How can the values that we affirm and promote have the greatest possible impact? This led to the creation of UU the Vote, a nonpartisan, UUA-wide campaign described in these terms. We are less than 12 months away from the most critical elections in our lifetimes. We must not be on the sidelines. Core Unitarian Universalist values, values of interdependence, democracy, human worth and dignity, the richness of pluralism and diversity, and the inborn right of all peoples to self-determination and agency are on the line. When we show up as people of faith, with these values front and center, we are offering a viable alternative to narratives and policies of domination, supremacy, scarcity, and exploitation that threaten and diminish our lives and future. Each of us will choose our candidates as individuals, but as a religious movement, we can organize for collective impact. That's the basic idea of the UU the Vote campaign, which is the name used at the national or UUA level. In our state, the campaign is coordinated by the Unitarian Universalist Advocacy Network of Illinois, UUNI, which has complicated the situation by using a different name, Vote Love, for our Illinois UU the Vote campaign. I could explain that. Talk to me if you want an explanation. I'll skip it for now. Initially, the UU the Vote campaign was organized around 5 themes of activity. 1, voter registration and mobilization. 2, values-based conversations. 3, election protection and countering voter suppression. 4, forming partnerships and sharing our resources. And 5, spiritual sustenance. I think most of those words make sense to you. I'll say more about values-based conversations later in the third movement. But as you know, things don't always go according to plan, and that has certainly been true in 2020, this most remarkable year. In March, the COVID-19 pandemic broke out across the United States, and a lot of the UU the Vote planning was no longer relevant. Many people began limiting their contact with others, and meetings of practically any size were soon discouraged. The UU the Vote organizers reconvened to rethink how the campaign could operate in this new context. And they simplified the 5 themes into 3. Act locally, all in for democracy, and spiritual sustenance. All in for democracy, as I understand it, means let's work for greater participation in the democratic process in the ways that are most important in our own communities. And now, even more recently, images of a Minneapolis police officer kneeling on the neck of George Floyd's have swept the nation. And they've unleashed a torrent of energy, proclaiming, once again, that Black Lives Matter. As rallies, marches, and demonstrations in honor of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and so many others swept across the nation, they have added a new and poignant way to be all in for democracy. So this is the story of what UU the Vote is and where it came from. In the next movement of the message, I'll respond to the question, why love? But first, let me remind you that UU the Vote, our national UU campaign to engage the democratic process with our UU values, is the recipient of this month's social action offering. Information about how you can contribute is printed in the email you used to access this service. I invite you to join my family and me in supporting UU the Vote as generously as you can. Thank you.
Just as we share our sorrows and joys in fellowship, we share our financial resources with the congregation as our circumstances allow. During the pandemic, some folks are experiencing hardship. Others are relatively unaffected financially. We appreciate the generosity of spirit, time, effort, and money of all during these challenging times for the good works of the fellowship within the congregation and beyond. Your checks written to CUF, C-U-F, 105 North Parish Lane, Carbondale, 62901, are much appreciated. And don't forget that Social Action Sunday is now all month long. UU the Vote, which you have already heard about, is the July recipient organization. You can donate online or by check. The address is in our weekly bulletin. Now, please join Stephanie Reese in the offering song, From You I Receive. The words are on the screen.
From you I receive, to you I give. From together we share, and from this we live. Together we receive, and from this I give. From together we share, and from this I give. Together from this I give, together we share, and from this we live.
Some of you have asked, why love? You might wonder whether we don't need something stronger than love as the basis for our campaign to engage democracy in this truly critical election year. Wouldn't courage or integrity or honesty or science or reason be a better basis? Let's take a look at that question. Many of us feel a sense of fear as we think about the next 6 months and beyond, and these fears are not imaginary. It's hard not to feel a growing sense of anxiety as we face the coronavirus pandemic and social fragmentation and hostility, and racism and police violence, and climate change, economic inequality and uncertainty, political disarray, and possibly our own personal challenges on top of all that. This year, 2020, is a year unlike any that I've lived in my lifetime, and the stakes seem very, very high as the national election approaches. Is it really possible that love can help us respond constructively to the widespread fear that significant concerns like these engender? Psychologist Elizabeth Kubler-Ross regards love and fear as the two basic emotions from which all other emotions come forth. She says, deep down at our cores, there are only two emotions, love and fear. All positive emotions come from love, all negative emotions from fear. From love flows happiness, contentment, peace, and joy. From fear comes anger, hate, anxiety, and guilt. But it's more accurate to say that there is only love or fear, for we cannot feel these two emotions together at exactly the same time. They're opposites. If we're in fear, we are not in a place of love. When we're in a place of love, we can't be in a place of fear. Love is a choice we make, sometimes a difficult one, about how we live and act in a given context. In other words, when we need to respond to some situation in life, we can do so either out of love or out of fear. It can be empowering to respond from a place of love. When I feel disrespected or taken for granted and express those feelings to others, it will make a big difference whether I speak my response in love or out of fear. Psychotherapist Nancy Collier describes that difference in these terms. To live from love, not fear, on a practical level, is to shift from a goal of protecting our ego, being right, winning the argument, being not to blame, and move into actually being kind, being loving in our actions. It is to stop proving that we are a good person and to actually be that person, to be courageous enough to open our heart and to be love even when our ego is screaming in fear. Other people sharing practical lessons based in their lived experience validate this understanding. You will recall Ahmaud Arbery, the young black man killed as he jogged through a Georgia neighborhood last February. Ahmad's mother, Wanda Cooper Jones, after his death, shared this perspective. Our job as parents is to train our children in the way to go. How can you love and teach them hate? People who are hurt other people. People who are loved love other people. You're about to see Bishop Michael Curry, presiding bishop of the Episcopal Church, in a 1-minute video that comes from the June 20th virtual rally organized by the Poor People's Movement. Bishop Curry speaks about the extraordinary things that we have seen ordinary people do because of love. Believe me, he describes the power of love more beautifully than I can.
We lament because we love. We prophesy and stand for prophetic witness because we love. We advocate for justice because we love. We speak painful truth because we love. Because we love our fellow human children of God. Because we love this creation that God has given us. And because we love, we must stand up for what is right. Because we love, we must stand up for what is good. Because we love, we stand up for what is just. Because we love, we stand up for what is not selfish, but sacrificial. Because we love, we march. Because we love, we call on our leaders to help us to make America, America, a shining city on a hill, and not a place of darkness and despair. Let love lead us. Let love guide us. Let love show us the way.
As you probably remember, at our annual congregational meeting on May 31st, we voted to undertake Vote Love, engaging the democratic process and social justice, as our congregation-wide campaign for this year. But in reality, we've been working on UU the Vote since January, when 19 of us gathered as part of the UU the Vote kickoff webinar broadcast. And since then, we've worked on sharing information related to the upcoming election, getting ready to do voter registration, and learning about values-based conversations. 5 CUF members attended a 4-session online workshop about those conversations, hoping we would be able to share this technique with many of you, and that lots of us would try to have this kind of conversation with friends, family, acquaintances, and others, especially with folks who were uncertain how they might be voting. Here's a brief example of something I would call a values-based conversation, except it's not a conversation since I'm doing all the talking. Here we go. Recently, I read an editorial in the Southern Illinoisan that criticized the proposed fair tax amendment, which will appear on the ballot in November. The proposal, if approved by a sufficient number of voters, will amend the Illinois State Constitution to allow for higher income tax rates for higher income earners, similar to the federal income tax structure. I didn't think the editorial criticisms made sense, and I support the fair tax proposal, so I wrote a letter to the editor in response, stating why I support the fair tax and criticizing briefly the editorial. My letter was published a week or so later, and if you've known me for a while, none of this is very surprising. Every once in a while I get a letter to the editor published in the Southern Illinoisan. But I did something with this letter that I don't usually do. I was on a Zoom chat with family members, and somebody asked what's new, and I said, well, I had a letter to the editor published in our local newspaper, and they asked what it was about. 3 of my siblings are registered voters in Illinois, and when one of them said that she didn't know very much about the Fair Tax Amendment, I offered to send them a copy of my letter to the editor, and I included a link to the Vote Yes for Fair Tax website. That's where a lot of us are today. As Unitarian Universalists, we have values that are relevant and I think important in thinking about the upcoming election. And we have information about critical topics like police violence or climate change or economic inequality. We have choices and we have voices, articulate and convincing voices, and We have information about the choices that are coming up. We know other people, people who may not be tracking the Fair Tax Amendment or climate change or police violence very closely. Maybe they're not tracking them at all. We know people who may be uncertain about how they plan to vote. We can speak about the values that we affirm, the way that we're looking at this election, and encourage them to consider it from our perspective. If they are people who share values that we consider important, such as those expressed in our 7 principles, there's a good chance they'll listen to us if we speak. If we speak. If, in Bishop Curry's words, we let love guide us and show us the way. Make no mistake, friends, this is the time to speak. Think about the impact of the November election. Now is the time to use our talents. Now is the time to share our insights, to use our articulate voices, to do what we can to make a difference in the future of our community, our state, and our nation. Let's listen to what the people around us are saying, and let's respond from a place of love.
The earth does not belong to us. We belong to the earth. The earth does not belong to us. We belong to the earth. This we know. All things are connected. All things are connected, like the blood of a family. All things are connected. This we know. This we know. Whatever befalls the earth, befalls the sons and the daughters of the earth. Whatever befalls the earth, befalls the sons and the daughters of the earth. This we know. This we know. We did not weave the web of life, we are merely a strand in it. We did not weave the web of life, we are merely a strand in it. This we know. All things are connected. All things are connected. All things are connected. This we know. This we know. Whatever we do to the well, we do to ourselves.
Even though we're not meeting at the building for Sunday services, there is a lot going on with our congregation and community. Please be sure to read the announcements in the email that was sent yesterday with the order of service. I want to remind you that we now have just 3 Zoom links, one for RE gatherings, one for internal CUF gatherings like committee and group meetings, and one for public gatherings like live-streamed Sunday services, Vespers, and cocktail hour. Please consult your email or ask one of our Zoom hosts, Jean Basanta, Martha Shum, or Amy Weber. Our next Vespers is on Wednesday at 7 p.m. And please note that we will not have a new spiritual sustenance or Sunday service next week. We will post a link to past services so that you can watch one that you missed, or you can go to the service of the Church of Larger Fellowship, which is a spiritual resource offered by the UUA. Now, let us thank Pat York and Bob Swinson for our beautiful music this morning, and Bill Sasso for his inspiring and thoughtful messages. Special thanks to Amy Weber, who made this spiritual sustenance service possible. And thanks to all who were a part of this service. That includes each and all of you who watch this video. Read the words, sing the songs, send your check, share your sorrows and joys. We feel each other's presence and help each other get through these difficult days. Newcomers, we are very happy you joined us this morning. Please send us an email and introduce yourself. And now, please join hands if you have someone with you, or turn your palms up to receive and give the benediction. It's by Margaret Mead. Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has.
May the blessings of love rest upon you. May peace abide with you. May Love's presence illuminate your heart now.